The Around the NFL podcast. Is Daddy ever leaving home?
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hansis, coming to you from a city filled with heroes in bunkers. Mark Stessler, Greg Rosenthal, and joining us from his bunker, Steve Wyche. What's up, boys?
What's happening?
What is up? How is everybody?
Wow,
Good.
hard to measure right now. I wouldn't say glowing.
Well, pretty exasperated there. Pretty exasperated.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's only so many moments in life where you feel like you're living through history, and you could imagine that it'll be something that's going to be talked about for a long time, decades even. It'll be taught in schools. Hopefully, in this case, it becomes a catalyst for a change. What happened with the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and now nationally, protests that have been going on, demonstrations, many of them peaceful, some destructive, and including in our city here in Los Angeles, and just sitting at home, or if you're out and about in the city, it's all really surreal, and it's all set against the backdrop of a global pandemic, profoundly dysfunctional political landscape we're in right now, and all of it is just hard to process. And our job, obviously, is primarily, Greg, is to talk pro football, but real life sometimes steps to the forefront. So that's where we are at the top of today's show. I mean, it's just something that it feels it's right to talk about where we are in life right now with this country and in the world.
Right, and we will get to the football. We got a Matt Rhule interview. We're gonna play. We'll talk some other random news too. But yeah, it's hard to avoid talking about it when it's our reality. Like Santa Monica right now, we're taping this in the afternoon. We're already on curfew. We're not allowed to be outside right now in Santa Monica. I checked out, some of the damage that happened yesterday in the town, and it's obviously dispiriting, but it is different. I mean, it's hard not to think back to Ferguson and all the other incidents of police brutality that this country's talked about and faced over the last decade. It's hard not to think about that, and hard not to think about, from our point of view, Colin Kaepernick. Steve Wyche is with us. He was the one who broke the story about Colin Kaepernick. First kneeling on the sideline, and it's hard not to think that this time, if nothing else, it's different. It's like 150 cities this is happening in right now, and so that's different. I don't know, that more people are talking about police brutality. I don't think that as many people are getting as distracted by like red state, blue state stuff, because it's not about the state. Look at our state. Like, it's not about red state, blue state. It's about police brutality, and that conversation is happening, and it's a painful one, but it's like it's unavoidable.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in here. It's more about right and wrong, and for whatever political landscape or whatever you believe, Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, there is no way any human being with the soul could have looked at a video of a person dying with somebody's knee to his neck, two other people on that man's body, and then somebody playing lookout and not be upset about it. And I think that's why, Greg, when you say this is different, there were always excuses before. He should have complied. He had a criminal background. There was always something to give somebody peace of mind why murdering an unarmed black man was justified. There's no way you could look at that when you saw this man's lifeless body on the ground for 3 minutes and smug Derek Chauvin with his knee on his neck and his hand in his pocket seemed to be just like thinking about planes taking off or sunsets in Jamaica while this man's air is being lost in his body. That you could sit by and be okay with that. The aftermath, with these provocateurs and agitators vandalizing and breaking windows and looting, taking away from the positive protesters is sad. But people like me have had enough. This comes on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, where so many people are, in my opinion, participating in cover-ups. They're just saying, oh, well, that's just another black body gone. And that's what people, when they say Black Lives Matter, that's what it means. Not that they're superior to anybody else, but that they actually mean something in the overall landscape. And again, that's why this is different. We'll see if anything comes out of it. They've already changed out of the prosecutor in Minnesota because they had no faith in this person to actually go after these police officers. It's already out of his hands. So a salute to that. But in all these other states where this crap has been going on or still going on, the cover-up of the actual ugly act, that's what needs to start, is people need to start being held accountable.
Yeah, Steve, I love the way you just expressed all that. And, I think we're all in one similar boat where, we're at a time where we're housebound for many reasons. And, the fact that coronavirus has been buried as a B storyline, because this is much more striking and more critical to who we are as people. And I am in a state where I'm just sort of observing and trying to make to listen and make sense of it all. But I feel like what I've watched over the past 3 or 4 days, that like nothing in our country will ever be the same, and that's a good thing. I'm thankful for one thing that video was captured, because without it, I think it would have just been another hideous incident that sailed down the river without much notice. Because it was captured, because anyone with a beating heart inside of them are horrified by what they saw, it forces us to confront. And frankly, those of us with children, you'd typically maybe hide their eyes from some of this. My feeling is the opposite, that if things are going to change, it starts with the people inside our own homes seeing how wrong things are, and how, as you said, corrupt the system is from the deepest levels outward. And so, total change from here on out, and it should serve as an eye opener, unless you are walking around as a total zombie.
And you said, Mark, nothing will ever be the same. That to me is, when I look at like the big picture of all this, to me, the jury's out on it. And I really hope that this is the catalyst. And this will be different than the other times. And it does feel different. We're all old enough to remember the LA riots in 92. But this seems like, and there is a call for it not just to be Black and people of color speaking out, but white America also getting behind this cause. And I feel like that's different too. You sense that as well. Will it be enough to spark real change? And on the subject, Steve, of the NFL obviously has a seat in a chair in the history of all this, going in recent history about the idea of police brutality and social injustice, and Colin Kaepernick, who seems to be becoming a bigger and bigger figure in American history by the day. And especially now, it almost feels like what he was doing when he was kneeling was prescient, and it was in a way that was clouded by all the political stuff and all the Trump stuff. Now it's so clear, it should be at least, what that was all about. It wasn't about not being a good American. It was about, hey, this is going on, this stuff. And now maybe, Steve, with the advances in camera phones and the fact that people are getting more and more fed up, not just Black people, that it's going to lead to a real change. The Kaepernick side of it, how do you think, and the NFL side of it, Steve, like, they release a statement. Obviously, it doesn't get received well by the greater public, because a lot of the greater public believes that the NFL did not do right by Kaepernick on the issue and hasn't done enough to support causes related to social injustice. How do you think the NFL, beyond a press release saying that we're going to continue to work with groups, can actually make positive change and not just positive words on a press release?
Well, I mean, look, it's accountability. That's, I'm with you, Dan, where you said, we'll see if it makes change, because we've heard this before. Remember 2016, 4 years ago today, election cycle. That's when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, because you had all the unarmed Black people over the previous couple of years, Tamir Rice and Michael Brown and everybody getting killed. And we're still here, man. So in terms of the NFL, to me, it starts in their own house. And look, I'm going to air a little dirty laundry, but it is what it is. Where are the people of color calling any shots? And I'm not just talking about owners. I'm talking the league office. Where are the people of color at our network? You guys have a black or Latino or Asian supervisor? Have you ever? I've never worked for a black editor. I've never worked for a black boss. Latino, Native American, Polynesian. They've all been white men and white women. And so to me, by having legitimate action and diversity in your own house, instead of a press release, instead of 70% black workforce that people see on Sundays, but having it in your own house, other than Troy Vincent and other than Al Riveron, that are legitimate, not hires to make you feel good, but are legitimate hires where people are in on decision-making powers. At our network, there are 30-plus VP senior executives, and I think there are 2 or 3 of color. And they allow us the freedoms to come on platforms like this and speak our minds and whatnot. That's great. But where's someone for me to aspire to? Who do I look up to aspire to? And so I think that's where it starts. And I also think guys like you and other people in the league, just in private conversations, someone's dropping N-bombs or saying this and that. God, I can't believe these people are breaking up buildings. Well, here's why they're breaking up buildings. Because this is the 12 millionth time we've seen this and nothing has happened. We've got your freaking attention.
Right.
It may not be the positive attention. It may not be the thing that honors these deceased people and their families properly, but we've got your freaking attention. And that's, and that's how a lot of us feel.
I think you speak to something that there's a lot of statements happening right now, but that's action. I mean, that's taking action. And look, black people in our lives have been telling it's not a new thing to know the problem with the police state that black people have in this country. The new thing is cell phones, really, and hopefully a new generation kind of speaking up. But I do think the NFL is in an interesting place because of Kaepernick. And we talked about it on the podcast then, how, him not coming back into the league and just everything that they went through. You even knew then that, look, he's going to be one of the most important NFL figures we've ever covered. And you knew that then. And that's growing even more so now. But I do think it is interesting to think about where at least the league was publicly then, and a lot of white people, frankly, were publicly then, where it's like there was a lot of division even among the owners of in coaches of how we're going to handle this, and a lot of teams did not want their players kneeling, and we remember that, and a lot of coaches didn't, and then different ones wanted to do it in certain ways. Okay, you can do it once if it's with the owner, and then that's it. Whereas I think today you're seeing, at least publicly, more of a rush with a lot of them to embrace, the right message of fighting police brutality publicly. And I do wonder if and you see a little bit more with white players speaking up, like white quarterbacks.
Sure. That's huge, man. That's big.
And of course, you can say a lot of it's PR and this or that, but Kaepernick helped open that space and that change. And even the social justice, initiatives that the NFL has done, like that is, I think, a reflection. So it does put the NFL in this interesting spot, even compared to other leagues, I think, of what happens from here.
But I would say this, it remains shameful what happened to the Colin Kaepernick message, what it was about and what it got turned into by people unwilling or unable to embrace it, more unwilling. And if anything, when I mentioned, I think there is a bit of a polar shift that we've now seen it with our own eyes and we cannot deny it. And it's not new. It's been going on for a long time. Kaepernick is validated entirely by this, and I will not listen to anyone with a different take on that. I mean, and the league should realize that it could have been handled completely differently from the start.
Yeah. So we'll continue, obviously, to talk about this and talk about it from an NFL angle and however we feel like is important. And Steve, you were at my last thing I was just thinking about with Kaepernick was, I think it was last November, the workouts for Colin Kaepernick when he had a public workout for NFL teams. It reminds me that he, at least what we hear, still wants to be an NFL quarterback. And how many years has it been since he played now? Where do we, is this going to be the third full season?
Third full season. It was, he first sat down for the national anthem in 2016. So he finished out that season and hasn't played since.
Pretty unbelievable.
Steve,
we have.
Oh, go on,
Greg.
I was going to ask Steve. Just you did some roundtables today. I know for the network.
Oh yeah.
Did anything come out of that?
Oh my goodness, so powerful. Jim Trotter did one with Kurt Warner and Dr. Todd Boyd, let's say a current affairs sociologist, pop culture sociologist who does a lot of stuff with athletics and Black history. And that stemmed from Kurt tweeting over this weekend, what can I do to help? Because I think there are a lot of non-Black people asking that question because they're sickened and they want to know. And Kurt and I had a great discussion Sunday about it. And so that panel was honest and frank in a lot of historical context to future solutions. And then I moderated one with Josh Norman, Josh McCown, and Mike Robinson. And man, it was raw. It was raw. Josh Norman talked about this is racist. This is bigotry. Black people are fed up. But he was also solution driven. And the solution driven is kind of what I just talked about on the small scale, talking to your kids like you're talking about, Mark, talking to your kids about when you see something wrong, like your friend's avoiding another little Black kid because he's a Black kid, go play with him. To just things that are far more macro. And then Josh McCown, another member of the Players Coalition, and of course, a white quarterback who's been very active for years, talking about how Black people walk around life with a weighted vest, right? Whereas, and he drew this great comparison, this great analogy as to, he said he's had a different offensive coordinator every year of his, 19, 20-year NFL career. So he was always learning new offenses while the incumbent quarterback knew the offense. It was preparing for other defenses. So that person had a leg up. So he says, white America has always been that incumbent quarterback. You can attack the opposing defense. You have that leg up. Whereas Black folks are the guy coming in just trying to figure out how to navigate enough to survive. And, Michael Robinson, very passionate. We had some great conversations about Brian Flores and his message and how not only was he inspiring, but how he called out people who were awfully noisy during Kaepernick, some of his colleagues, and how he's had to lose friendships because where are you now?
Some of his bosses, I think, was a subtext that I read into it, maybe.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so. And isn't it interesting how some of those bosses and some players who are no longer there are being far more outspoken about subjects like this than they ever were? Kind of makes you think a little bit.
Well, and I know, Dan, we are going to spin to other NFL news, but it is interesting because people say, when they say stick to sports, it's like, this is sports because all the coaches and players, they're dealing with this today. Frank Reich, they put out, he had a statement to the media, but he talked about what he talked about the player. It's like, there's no avoiding it. This is what the coaches are talking about. This is what the owners, whether they're releasing a statement or not, it's like, this is, they're having to handle it. It's not like there's a choice to go just like run and hide when that's your workforce.
Oh, if you avoid it, you're losing your guys. If you avoid it, bye. Kiss it goodbye.
And Steve, I know you're going to continue to be part of the conversation on NFL Network this week, so make sure everybody you follow along for those important conversations. Steve, would you mind sticking around for the rest of the news, which I wouldn't say it was at the same level of importance, but it's pretty close because George Kittle doesn't have a new contract yet. So maybe we should talk about that as well.
Always love hanging out with you guys.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. This is what's going on in the kind of news of the NFL. We'll start with Mike Silver, our own Mike Silver of NFL Network, who reports that the 49ers and George Kittle, the star tight end, are, quote, far apart in extension talks. We'll see what happens with this. But, Steve, I mean, Kittle is one of those dudes that you absolutely build a team around. And Austin Hooper, I believe, Mark Sessler's Austin Hooper is now the highest paid tight end in the league. And I believe the agent said, I don't care about the tight end market. I'm being paid to do a George Kittle deal. He will be expensive. Couldn't the 49ers afford him? I guess that becomes the biggest question.
Yes. Look, they've cleared a lot of cap space. It's one of the reasons why they traded DeForest Buckner. We're seeing the same thing going on with George Kittle that we saw with Jimmy Graham. I'm a tight end, but I got wide receiver numbers. You say I don't block in line, so I'm a wide receiver. Give me that wide receiver money. Give me that, that big Stephon Diggs, those $16, $17 million numbers. And, of course, that went to arbitration or whatever, and Jimmy Graham was a tight end, and George Kittle's going to get tight end, but they're going to have to pay him. And this is one, they've already got their quarterback on a big contract. They've got a couple other big deals, but you can finesse, you can work these numbers. This isn't, what wide receiver is making big, what offensive skill player other than Jimmy Garoppolo is making money? None. So
right.
You can work this. You've got, D Ford, and you've got some other defensive players making big bread. You just paid Eric Armstead. Quan Alexander's making money. But play that franchise tag game with George Kittle and it won't go well.
I mean,
he's vital.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I would just say, what the concept of back pay, this is a player who has given you 170 plus catches over the past 2 seasons, 2,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, and made $719,000 last year. The Jimmy Graham comparison is so apt. And you go and look, when you go into Pro Football Focus and you dig into the positions, nothing is weirder than the tight end position because the rankings are all out of whack because we've dealt with this before. You get one jabroni who can block really well, but he had 8 catches all season. And he
Ben
gets
Hartsock is ranked
Ben
number
Hartsock,
1.
right. Ben Hartsock, the number 1 tight end 1 year. There are distinctly 2 different positions. Jimmy Graham played the different version of tight end. George Kittle plays it times 2. He has a better argument to make an incredible paycheck based on what they've given him for what he's produced.
Well, no, he's a fascinating case if you're into contract because he should be making more than Julio Jones. That he should be making double what probably the highest paid end. To me, Jimmy Graham's not a great comparison, really. I understand at the time it was like an argument, but tight ends are so underpaid if they're as good as George Kittle, who can change a whole offense in terms of the defense doesn't know what you're going to do on a play-to-play basis. He's such a good blocker. He's such a good receiver that, of course, to me, he's worth as much as an AJ Green or a Julio Jones. And that's almost like double what any tight end is making. I really think tight ends should just be pissed at Rob Gronkowski for the contract that he signed earlier in his career. I know he did it with 2 years left at his rookie deal, but tight ends have been underpaid ever since because he took a totally below market deal for his entire career. And he's the greatest tight end of all time. And everyone else got stuck just being like, well, you're not as good as Gronk. So you're getting slotted under that. Like Kittle, and I think he's going to try is going to try to do what Le'Veon Bell unsuccessfully did for running backs, which is just blow up the entire market for tight ends because they're all underpaid.
In these trying times, everybody together now. Everything's Belichick's fault.
You're loving this. This is your favorite subplot of the offseason.
Hey, we mentioned Matt Rhule is going to be on the show today. It was actually an interview we did Friday for the Around the NFL broadcast on NFL Network, which Steve Wyche, see how it all ties together, sat in last week for us in the Chris Wessling pregnancy chair. Although
Speaking
you didn't
of
look
back
pregnant,
pay, we owe Weiss some dinner, if nothing else. We owe him
do.
Him and Matt Money Smith.
We do.
Well, drive through a Taco Bell still open.
But anyway, Rhule will be on the show. We'll play that interview back on the podcast in just a little bit. But he has someone in his cornerback group that he needs. It's Eli Apple. Signs a 1-year, $3 million deal. It went nearly 2 months between when Apple's deal with the Raiders fell apart at the beginning of free agency, and actually it was 71 days until he agreed to terms with the Raiders. So more than 2 months. And this was with the Panthers. This is a spot, Mark Sessler, that Carolina needed help at. Apple's not a big star, despite being a first-round pick, but he should bring something to that group.
Yeah, on that Friday show, we each had to pitch an NFC South team to win the division, and I was tasked with the Panthers, which is, in that field of 4 teams, not the easiest pitch job, but it was.
Just say what it is. It's heroic, Mark. It's heroic.
It was heroic, but I don't know if
you spent most of your time patting yourself on the back for taking.
Well, I think it's heroic in the scope of being a football blogger, not in the larger context of things right now. But
you just demeaned the credibility of your football blogging there, Mark.
Yes, I do that often. It's
that's his
self-defense mechanism. But they lost James Bradbury. I was interesting when Greg did his starters piece that you mentioned the human being named Corn Elder as a potential starter had they not found anyone else. So this keeps Corn Elder at bay.
Yeah, their cornerbacks are about as bad as there were in the league. It feels like they still need another 1 or 2.
They do. I mean, look at the division.
Yeah,
right.
Well, at least
you're going up against.
Division.
Yeah. They're going to have to score some points. In other news, Eagles wide receiver Deshaun Jackson says, quote, it's going to definitely be a culture shock if NFL teams are playing in empty houses this season. In the event that there is an NFL season, we're still hoping that happens as well. Hey, listen, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. He was on Jackson on the Lane Johnson podcast, Outside the Lane. Get it? And he talked about what's something that the NFL could do to juice the telecast in the event that there is no crowd adds that natural excitement. Here's what D-Jax had to say. I think they should mic up players. They should give fans the insight to see what really goes on between the lines. It gets crazy, bro. I know in the trenches it gets crazy, and I know on the outside it gets crazy too. The conversations we go back and forth on. Steve, you know what it's all about in the trenches. You know what it's like covering these guys being in the locker rooms. Is this the best idea ever or the worst idea ever?
Oh, it's awesome. It's so good. The thing is, I mean, you'd have to put a disclaimer coming out of every break that, you may hear some language that you're really not comfortable with.
Right.
Because it's going to be spoken.
Well, they started doing it with the 30 for 30s on ESPN. They give you the option of the clean and dirty feed. Maybe that's where NFL telecasts are heading. I would love it.
Yeah, well, NFL Network will get the clean feed.
Yeah.
So,
You think?
but I mean, I just think it'd be awesome if you made Belichick's players, if you made the Patriots get mic'd up while they're going 8-8 this year. Would be like, I mean, I'm just sorry. I just did that for Dan to make me feel a little better. But I mean, come on. It would just be absolutely incredible. Just the wide receivers and DBs alone.
Well, and the mics might not need that many mics. I mean, UFC has done this a little bit since they've come back, and you can start hearing everything in the state. You can start hearing everything because there's no crowd. That you might just, like you had the mics on the center before. You might hear a lot just coming off of that. Like, I think there's something to it. I hate the idea of fake crowd noise. It seems so stupid. To like
the Falcons didn't seem to be opposed to it a few years back, but they were ahead of their time.
It's so stupid to make an artificial situation. If there's no crowd, that like it's a totally unique thing, and it's gonna be weird. But like that's what you're watching. Let's be real. Sports are real, and you might get some good John back and forth. It'd be great.
Could you see coaches or just certain coaches totally bumping on the idea of this, where mid game, it's one thing if it's released 6 days later as a special. But mid-game, a hot mic picks up various play calls, scheming scenarios, and Bill Belichick's head explodes. I don't know if that's what they're looking for.
Well, and also injuries. Like,
right, that's true.
Yeah,
sure.
Hey, that guy over there,
Sure.
that's where that's going to be like, nope.
That's a good point. It would really take one terrible injury for everyone to say that that's a bad idea.
It's not good.
Oh, yes.
And some people,
it's a great point.
People, the uneducated might not know that Steve Wyche playing big-time Division I football at Mizzou in his younger years.
Uniform. Didn't ever play a game. Didn't ever get into a game.
You never got on the field?
Never got on the field.
That's farther than we got.
I saw some really good players up
Who
close.
was there?
We played against Wisconsin when they had Al Toon, who might be the most incredible player
Ooh.
I've ever seen. He was like 6'4", 120 pounds, and just absolutely destroyed us. We played Oklahoma State when Jimmy Johnson was a coach. Thurman Thomas, Hartley Dykes. I mean, that's what Oklahoma had. Bosworth, Tony Casillas. I mean, incredible. Here's a great one.
Hartley Dykes, a disappointing first-round pick for the Patriots back in the day. I think I had a shirt, and he didn't really come through.
But here's a great one. So we came up. We wore all yellow uniforms for the first time. It's a 70-year anniversary since the last time Missouri wore them, which should have been a hint that they weren't going to look good on TV. And we're playing Notre Dame when Jerry Faust was coaching them. And they were massive. They had Steve Berline, Mark Bavaro, Alan Pinkett, Tim Brown. I mean, just first-round draft picks galore. I think they finished 6-5 that year. And we had them on the ropes. Our field goal kicker missed like a 35-yarder. We lose the game. But I was like, that team should be 11-0. I mean, they you talk about watching a team get off the bus, and you're like, ooh, they're different. They were so huge, man. And Mark Bavaro. Had I played, that's who I would have been going up against. He would have had a great game.
Seemed like a tough fellow to me, based on the anecdotes.
That's like us when we get off the NFL media bus at the Super Bowl, and everyone's just like, "Ooh, what podcast is that?"
That's right.
We go in slow motion as we put our sunglasses on. Weiss, I find you to be one of the most well-respected, and just everyone likes Steve Wyche. Like, Weiss is just like one of those dudes. If anybody was ever to get a Rudy scenario where it's like, I'm not playing, Steve's a senior, it's his last game. If he doesn't see the field, we're not taking the field. If there's not a Weiss Rudy scenario, then that's on Mizzou and your entire organization, the team over there.
Bro, nobody would have cared, man. Nobody would have cared. We would have gone up against Kansas, our arch rival, and lost again. And they would have blamed it on me.
I'm trying to think. I don't think Sean Astin would be a good guy to play you in the movie. Who would play Wyche if there was a Rudy scenario?
Oh man,
Denzel maybe. I don't know.
Young Denzel.
Oh, his son, but his son's too short.
I think
somebody.
You go a little CGI and you get Denzel, the young Denzel, the same way they've given you, young all these other stars in these various movies.
We might have to ask your wife about that. I'm sure there's a male celebrity that she says, "Oh, you look like."
You know what? Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Back when I had my hair.
There we go. Bang.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there's the Rock. Dwayne, get the offer out to Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Well, I guess we need a time machine to make it a situation as well. But anyway, Steve, you've come and you've, as always, delivered an incredible performance. Maybe didn't get on the field at Mizzou, but you're an MVP on the Around the NFL podcast and a valued member of NFL Network. And that perspective that you gave us at the top of the show is frankly necessary, and we love to get it from you. So thank you, as always, Steve. And best of luck this week, because this is a different one. We've been working together for a long time, but this is not like other weeks.
No, appreciate you guys. Appreciate the conversation. Appreciate all you guys do, because you guys are a window and not a mirror to society, man. People can see the future through you guys instead of looking back and seeing themselves. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. You're the best, buddy. All right, Steve Wyche. There he goes. He gets a well-deserved glass of Chardonnay as he gets ready for what lies ahead. Gentlemen, we mentioned Matt Rhule. That's what's happening in the news, by the way. We mentioned Matt Rhule in the interview that we did on the Around the NFL broadcast, which, again, you can check out every Friday on NFL Network, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. There are also re-airings late at night and in the morning. I think our show's better drunk, and I'm not condoning alcohol usage, especially if you're underage. But if you are someone who likes to have a few drinks on the weekend to unwind, I think our show is even better. Greg, actually, his performance and his CompuScore numbers go through the roof when you have a few whiskeys. That's what I
CompuScore?
No,
what is that? What is CompuScore number?
I don't know. Wasn't that like the boxing measurement? Wasn't there something like that? I can't remember.
ComScore tells you like how well your website's doing. I think, but you're right. We're on at 10 p.m. Eastern, and I think 11 p.m. Pacific. At different times. So you're right. You can get a late night viewing. You can get like the next morning, 6 a.m. or 10 a.m. waking up.
The dog.
Little view. That's right.
What is CompuScore? Let me see what this is. We are a full-time family-owned company that has been timing athletes for over 35 years.
Yeah, so that was a very apt analogy there.
Swim events, triathlons, dualathons, televised podcasts, biking events, stair climbs, and more. So,
Greg's CompuScore rises as people imbibe alcohol. It makes total sense now that we know what the company is involved in.
Anyway, we had Matt Rhule, the former Baylor coach, and a man that my father-in-law, Bob Bates, absolutely adored at his time down there in Waco. Now he's the head coach of the Panthers, and here was our conversation with Matt Rhule, including a little speed round at the end. Enjoy. Joining us now, we're so excited to have Matt Rhule, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Matt, welcome to the show. And is there any way you could have that music underneath you at all time throughout all your coaching duties in Charlotte?
I would love nothing more than to walk around with my own theme music.
Matt, it's, even in the best of times, being a rookie NFL head coach is a challenge, but it seems like you're entering the picture at a particularly fraught time. You're entering a division that has a perennial Super Bowl contender, favorite in the Saints. All of a sudden, Tom Brady's in the mix and Gronk. You have no traditional offseason activities. And, the organization decided to move on from the most popular, successful player in history, in Cam Newton, in franchise history. This is a challenge. I know you just rebuilt Baylor from the ground up, but this one feels like a tough one. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited about it. It's not like I didn't walk in eyes wide open in terms of, hey, that there's things we have to do, but I'll even, amplify it even more. Like, of the 90 guys on our roster, I've probably actually physically met maybe 20. I think like 8 of them have played for me before. 7 of them. So I could be walking down the street tomorrow and bump into somebody and they could be playing on the team and I haven't actually met them yet. So, but you know what? There's two sides to every
not
development,
ideal.
No, it's not, but you know what? It's like anything in life. This adversity, these obstacles, they force you to try to be at your best. I know this. I know myself as a head coach, my assistant coaches, being in the virtual offseason, I think we are better teachers now than we were a month ago. I think being home and being a dad teaching my kids has made me a better teacher than I was a month ago or 2 months ago. So just try to take the positives out of it and not worry too much about the negatives.
Wow. I need some homeschooling tips from you then. I don't know if I've gotten any better.
It's made me a worse podcaster, I have to tell you that, man.
I wonder, maybe Teddy Bridgewater is one of the guys you met. Maybe not, but I wanted to ask you about him because, these two clowns on the other side of the screen from me, they like to make their little jokes about Teddy. They talk about his air yards per attempt. I mean, they like him as a person, but they seem to think he's not as exciting as a quarterback. Explain to me why you guys wanted to bring him in and thought he was a fit for your system.
Yeah, I had a chance to coach against Teddy my first year at Temple. I actually put up the stats the other day for our team. It was like 25 of 35 for 348. I mean, he just destroyed us. And then I went on and watched them in Minnesota without knowing him really well, and watched them, take a team to the playoffs. I think in year 2, whatever it was, and then have that terrible injury. And I think if anything you want to know about Teddy, just go back and watch the game he comes back and finally plays and watch his teammates. I'm a big statistics guy. I'm a big analytics guy. And they're really important, but they only tell about half the story. The best players in the world bring out the best in their teammates. And I can tell you, since free agency started, the amount of guys that want to play with Teddy has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with anybody else. They want to be a part of what he's doing because he brings out the best in people. And then to watch what, he went, had his little brief stint, whatever, with the Jets, watch what he did in New Orleans last year. And so we're getting ready to play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. We're practicing at the Saints facility. And he's out there by himself with a couple guys, and he's throwing red zone routes. Drew's going to start, and he's the backup late. I think it's, the game before the playoffs. And I'm watching him throw, and I'm watching the way people respond to him. And I have no idea I'm going to be in Carolina. And we start our little, jog through, and Tyquan Thornton's this great young receiver for us from Miami. And Teddy walks through our practice, and he walks over and says hello to him. Now, he's, maybe 8 years older than him, and he's talking to him, chopping it up with him. He comes over, and he's like, "Hey, coach, sorry to interrupt your walkthrough." And I sat there and told him, I said, "Teddy, I just want you to know how much respect I have for you, having coached against you, having seen what you've done, having seen the way people respond to you, man. I wish you the best." So you fast forward a couple months, and we have a chance to get him here. I believe so wholeheartedly in who he is as a quarterback. I believe in his abilities. I believe in his arm strength. I believe in his accuracy. I believe in his decision making.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I know he's going to make everyone else that much better.
See, there you go, guys.
I like that, Coach.
That's
I
all
like
you.
that. Well, I have a question for you. We're sold. Here's my question for you, because I just wonder from a you've come to the NFL. People talk about the lack of experience on the coaching staff, which I think you kind of have said, forget all that business. We're gonna attack this the way we do everything else. But is it a bit of a mental polar shift to have your mind occupied with, like, how do we shut down a sophomore 3 technique from Rice University, to now in the middle of the night you're thinking, we've got Drew Brees to deal with, we've got Matt Ryan to deal with. Oh, and by the way, they Tom Brady is going to leave the golf course at some point and be shoved into a Bucks jersey. The NFC South is stacked. I mean, is it for you just starting to game plan for these guys that you've been watching for so long at all striking mentally or a challenge?
Well, I mean, take out the X's and O's. I mean, Drew Brees and Tom Brady are not, and Matt Ryan aren't great because of just the X's and O's. I mean, they're great because of who they are as players. And so, I would say this. I would say, go be a defensive coordinator. Go be a head coach in the Big 12. Deal with Jalen Hurts running quarterback counter one way with a speed sweep the other side with an RPO in behind it. Go deal with quarterback run every down. Go deal with option football. We're at Temple and we're playing one week, we're playing the spread. The next week we're playing Navy and playing the triple. The X's and O's can sometimes be really challenging in college, way beyond, the more traditional stuff you see in the National Football League. What the difference in the National Football League is the matchups, is the expertise. And, I brought a lot of guys that were with me at Baylor because I believe they're the best of the best. And a lot of them I got from the NFL and convinced them to come to Baylor. There's a lot of money in college football. I could pay them pretty well. But we brought Jason Simmons in as our defensive pass game coordinator from Green Bay. We brought Al Holcomb, who's been a defensive coordinator, in as our run game coordinator. We brought Mike Fair in from the Indianapolis Colts. So we tried to bring in a bunch of great guys with me from Baylor and supplement them with a bunch of guys from the NFL. I really like our staff, and I think we'll do a good job coaching over the next couple of years.
All right, Matt. So far, we're all impressed. We think the Panthers are going to go 19-0. But you know what? We haven't done anything else. We haven't done the speed round. And this is where champions are made on the Around the NFL broadcast. Are you ready, Matt?
Yeah, give it a shot. I have no idea what's coming.
Hit the music. Hit the music. Here we go. Sopranos or Game of Thrones?
Oh, wow. That's like the Soprano.
Springsteen or Bon Jovi?
Springsteen.
Your uncle is married to your
Aunt?
Some people say aunt. Sessler says aunt. It's weird. Best Tarantino movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Safe.
Flat Earthers. What's their deal?
They don't get the whole story.
Pick the age that you live until. What is the age you live until?
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm going out early. I'm saying 67.
Oh my God. Have you read Art of War by Sun Tzu?
I legitimately have.
Wow. If you haven't read Art of War, do coaches talk about you behind your back?
Maybe just Coach Belichick.
How is the pizza in Charlotte? Be honest.
I love New York City pizza.
Jersey Shore or the Hamptons?
Jersey Shore. I have a house in Cape May. Jersey Shore.
Ooh. Are my Jets getting a star in Denzel Mims?
Yes.
Final
Had to
question,
go with the
pounding. You
Jets.
plan to keep doing it? You plan to keep
pounding
pounding.
until I die. Keep pounding.
Well, you did it. You're a champion, Matt. You killed the speed round, and we thank you so much for joining us. And like we said, not a traditional way to start your NFL head coaching career, but you sound like a guy that's going to get it done. So best of luck to you in 2020 and beyond. Matt Rhule.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all. Stay safe.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
All right. Mark, I have to say, your ability to keep it together during the Rhule interview was, I mean, kudos, because in terms of man crushes, you have to go all the way back to maybe Kyle Shanahan during his OC days to find someone that you have adored as much as Rhule.
I'd put Pettin up there. I think I learned firsthand when Little Debbie visited the studio, and I just went silent for about 15 minutes while the three of you knocked that interview out of the park, because I didn't know what to do or who I was.
Like a girl at a Beatles concert in a backstage meeting with Paul and John.
I'm laughing because I totally forgot about that. That is a sneaky great.
Oh, I think about it daily. It concerns me daily. But Rhule was, we're used to at this point seeing all sorts of people in the fourth square on our show or the fifth square. So I did my best to get one question out there, and I don't think I did a great job with that question. If I could critique that show, I had a kernel of a thought, and it went totally sideways with a question that went on for about 4 minutes longer than it needed to.
See, I didn't remember that.
You have to self-critique when you're watching it late at night. You got that beer in the hand, thinking, I could have done that better.
It was a missed
opportunity. It was a little verbose.
If we had time, my next question, if we had time for one more question, I was going to ask Matt Rhule seriously if he was ready to handle the pressure as Mark's new coaching crush. I would have maybe used a different word than that, but just that, he might not know this, but every year there's a coach that Mark kind of fixates, an offensive mastermind, and whether he thought he could handle that sort of.
And it's often not going well for those people. So
right. Laser. We haven't seen Laser was one of the originals back in the day.
Yeah.
Tough sitch for Laser.
DiFilippo was another one.
Pettin.
Oh, he caught some fire. Pettin, of course.
Pettin's okay.
Pettin's back on his feet.
For now. Pettin very nearly got, I feel like he was maybe a little closer to getting shoved out the door than people realized by the end of last year.
It was a rough ending.
Their defense got better.
Pettin might be the best Browns coach of the decade.
Yeah, although I would say probably Kyle Shanahan.
That's how bad their coaches have been.
They let Kyle Shanahan get out the door, please. We didn't need to go
head coach.
You mentioned, all right, so Kevin
Stefanski's was in a tough spot
now.
My point. Yeah.
Stefanski enters his first year with the Browns. Rhule his first year with the Panthers. You got Joe Judge, who we talked about on Wednesday's show, entering his first year with the G-Men. Who's the other debut coach this year?
It's Mike McCarthy being a new coach, not a first-time coach. But
Mike McCarthy, the only rookie ones, though.
In Dallas. And we could open this up to new OCs and DCs, but Rhule, it feels like, and we talked about it in our conversation, as you just heard, that he's in a very challenging situation, and we didn't really dive in too deep on the Cam Newton stuff because who knows how much say he really had in that, but that's a major kind of cloud hanging over Rhule that he might not even have control over, about how his quarterback ends up playing, how Newton's career continues. But it feels like Rhule with Christian McCaffrey, with some pieces, he seems to have his stuff together. It's going to be a challenge in year one, but you feel like he could be set up for success down the road. Where does he compare to some of these other new coaches and coordinators out there? Is anyone else that jumps out to you that's in an especially good spot, or conversely a bad spot?
I would say I think Stefanski is from a roster angle. You'd like to think he'd succeed right away, if not very early. But the overall Cleveland experience leaves you just sort of wanting to see it. I don't quite have the idea.
It's an institutional nightmare in Cleveland. Ultimately. Yeah, I mean, it's one part of it looks great, and then it's like the actual history of the organization the last 20 years, and it's like, how could you ever think positive? But what does that even really mean ultimately?
Right. And
if he has a fresh start, he has a fresh start.
Right. I'd offer this, that Andrew Berry, I think, has kind of under the radar for a GM who's been there for 3 or 4 months, done an incredible job. And I'm looking that through. I typically look at their front offices thinking there's probably a disaster looming behind the scenes, but Stefanski and Andrew Berry, every time they're asked about it, sing each other's praise and seem to be on the same page. And the Pettins and all these guys we mentioned from before were in counter opposite scenarios where they were battling their front offices and being undermined by them, and text messages down to the sidelines and suspensions. So I think Stefanski's set up to succeed this year, but I have a much better idea of who Matt Rhule is. And I really just believe, and to your father-in-law, his support of Matt Rhule and what he witnessed with his own eyes as a dug-in Baylor fan, he's done that everywhere he's gone. So to me, and I've said it over and over, I get kind of like college to pro Jimmy Johnson vibes, and I just think that I really think Matt Rhule is going to be the story of the NFL.
Baylor wasn't now. Yeah, Baylor wasn't at the level, obviously, of Penn State. That was unprecedented. But Baylor went from this organization or this college program that was kind of an eternal also-ran in that region. And then Art Briles came to town and RG3 exploded on the scene, and it turned them into a powerhouse. And then scandal brought that whole thing to the ground. And as with my family ties, I followed it pretty closely. That program, it appeared to be in a position where they had exploded, and then the way that things went up in flames, that they might just go underground for decades and be just an afterthought in the college football scene again. The fact that he was able to come in and rebuild that program, I think he went 1-11 the first year when they just had all sorts of issues and they were just trying to get on their feet. But after that point, they became one of the top programs in their conference and in the nation. And if he can take that same ability to team build, and obviously you could say it's apples and oranges, college and pros, but you just get the vibe. And I'm always a sucker with not to like keep our focus on Rhule, but I'm kind of a sucker as a New York, New Jersey guy for the straight shooting New York, New Jersey guy, the guy that seems relatable. And he seems like when you were younger, the type of guy like your friend's dad that had his together type guy. And you imagine that he would just be successful in life. That to me is Matt Rhule. And that a guy like that engenders a lot of faith. So I'm with you, Mark, that I think that he could be a very good hire. And yes, do I think would I take the unknown with Matt Rhule over the what I have in hand with Adam Gase? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I think the Panthers have somebody there that you can get excited about for sure.
Well, he combined a few things in college, and I think he's shown that he might be able to do it at the pros, which is it's the team building and the organization building, and it's the scheme. It's the combination. The great coaches can do both, and his coaching was extremely inventive. So he seems to get it, whatever it is. But he also is, bringing Joe Brady from LSU, and to get back to the whole thing with Cam Newton. I mean, I've assumed Matt Rhule 100% made that decision, or that he was the biggest voice by far. I assume that everything in the Panthers organization, he's the biggest voice by far. And I know ownership is going to be part of it, but I think David Tepper is signing up for Matt Rhule to be that guy. Yes. And I think when you heard him talk about Teddy Bridgewater, look, I think there was no mistake that they released that statement that Cam Newton can seek a trade the day before they signed Teddy Bridgewater, when you can assume they basically agreed to terms with Teddy Bridgewater the day before. So once they knew they had Teddy, the guy that they wanted to go after, and it's less money. It doesn't mean he's going to be their guy forever, but it's the guy that they wanted to go after for this year, who's played for Joe Brady, his offensive coordinator. I mean, I assume they looked at the Cam situation and thought, for whatever reason, I don't want to deal with that. And I do want to deal with Teddy Bridgewater, who one of our coordinator knows well. And I think Matt Rhule is set up for success too, because they don't have to win. Like if they go 5-11 and they're an exciting offense, everyone's going to love Matt Rhule, at least this year. In terms of public perception, just score some points and people will love Matt Rhule. Whereas Stefanski and McCarthy, they're going to have high expectations. I mean, they're going to be expected to win.
Well, they're giving Matt Rhule like what, a 6-7 year contract? I mean,
right, I think Stefanski has to have. If they go 7-9 again, it's like, well, Freddie Kitchens got a 7-9, and everyone's talking about him like he's the worst coach in the history of the U.S. So it's actually kind of a high bar for Kevin Stefanski to
the U.S.
history of the U.S. I've never heard that. I'm just saying,
people now talk about Freddie Kitchens like he is the worst coach ever, basically. And like, I get it. He did a bad job, but like he was not the only person in that.
Well, you know who doesn't think so? Joe Judge, who hired him to come coach tight ends, I believe. So, these guys keep hiring each other no matter what happens.
Well, the one thing we know about Freddie Kitchens, because we got a chance to meet and talk with him, like he seems like a totally cool guy that loves football and is passionate about it. So maybe sometimes the guy's just not right for the big chair, and the Browns learned the hard way that appeared to be Kitchens' fate. The one guy I might as well just touch on quickly. I think McCarthy is the best setup for success in Dallas, but also, and I think you've alluded to this a few times, Mark, this offseason, he also is under the most pressure because people are going to expect the Cowboys to win that division. You can't really say that with the Browns and the Giants and the Panthers. McCarthy's going to need to get that team going in the right direction and win 10, 11 games, or he's going to be seen as, we hired the guy that was burned out in Green Bay and is still getting the same type of results. So that there's some pressure there, but he certainly has, especially on the offensive side of the ball, an awesome setup.
Don't discount the epiphany that he had during this year away from the gridiron. So, I think that's probably the secret sauce right there.
I think you hit on it, though, Dan. Like, you don't hire McCarthy to, like, rebuild and like, develop young players. And, it's like they hired him because they're ready to win now, which is, okay, that makes sense. And they kept Kellen Moore. They kept Kellen Moore because they're ready to win now. I mean, they are one of the, in the desert. And I've already seen among some of our cognoscenti, they're one of the favorites. Mm-hmm. They're one of the top 5 or 6 favorites to go win the whole thing. And I don't think that's that crazy. When you have that good an offense, I don't think it's crazy.
I can also think of other years where they're the favorites because they're Dallas and it's presumed that they'll roll into the NFC title game. I mean, they've found a way to not do that for 20 plus years in a row, but what could go wrong?
All right. Man, you do not like Mike McCarthy.
No, that's more of the Cowboys have viewed themselves as a Super Bowl team since 1996. Gets one haircut,
and all of a sudden, Mike McCarthy can't even.
No, that is not.
If you really wanted to get deep into it, you could almost read this. You always mention the epiphany and the offseason PR that he did. I mean, if I'm out there and I'm Tom Pelissero, and we know he doesn't listen to our podcast, but if he did. Who kind of put together the biggest piece about McCarthy. I might take some offense that you're coming after my work.
Well, that is not true. But if you want to fire back, go look at anything I've written for the site over the last 3 months. I mean, talk about unnecessary fluff.
Way to tell yourself, Mark.
Very hard on himself today.
No, I question the nature of, sitting around on your phone reading 8,000 hours of sports articles right now, but people are in different situations.
That's fair.
I've also moved on epiphany wise. I am now all on the Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to talk trash anymore. Epiphany.
Okay.
That's the epiphany I'm all about.
Yeah, for now.
We move in silence. He's going to show up to games.
Sure, buddy.
Like a ninja outfit on and just little small letters, silence, on his shirt.
All right, move on to the next part of the show, whatever you guys have cooked up.
All right, let's spin the wheel. Enough. It is time to the Wheel of Teams, which is our weekly deep dive into one team in our league. It started off with the Arizona Cardinals. Last week, we had our buddy Bob Glauber talk the New York Giants, and now Ricky Hall. And hey, Ricky, how are you, by the way? How are you, Ricky?
I'm okay. How are you guys?
What do you think of Hartley Dykes, the former Patriots first round receiver?
Yeah, no, such a bust.
Tough stitch.
Hey, you got it right,
Ricky. I heard there's demonstrations going right outside your window too.
Yeah, I can hear some helicopters going on. I just got a notification that curfew went from 6 to 5 p.m. in about 5 minutes.
The helicopters are unnerving. So there was helicopters. Yes. The entire day nonstop yesterday from the morning till about 10:30 p.m. It went away, and then they were back around 5:30, and I was like, we're in the morning today. I was like, we're doing this again, but for the most part, they've left.
Yeah, it's scary out there. So
stay safe, Ricky Hollywood. We're gonna spin the wheel and find out which team we will be diving deep on Wednesday's show. Erica, are we ready? All right, Ricky, spin the wheel, baby.
All right, let's go Dolphins. All right.
Big moment here.
Let's go Broncos.
Ooh, the Tennessee Titans. Wow, look at that, Mark. One spot away from the Browns. So far.
I think it's better for the show that we're going to have a 20-minute conversation on the Browns anyway. So let's go Titans here.
I feel like we've overcorrected though. We used to joke that we never talked about the Titans. To now after this show, we've almost talked too much about the Titans. We've talked a lot about.
Well, guess what? It's coming. More Titans talk. Greg, and we know that they knocked off your Patriots and ended Tom Brady's New England career with a pick 6. You don't have to take it out on them. They were just doing what they were trained to do, which is win a football game.
Yeah. Be kind.
I enjoyed their little run. Reminded me of some early Patriots teams.
So yes, we will talk about the Titans on Wednesday's show, and we will get our heads together and pick someone from the beat or someone connected to the Titans to speak to as well. So tune in for that. All right. Before we go, I just want to talk about something, guys, and I know this particular person didn't necessarily want it to be something that was a big to do, but we have a well-trod saying here at the ATN podcast that we deliver football news with a touch of mirth. And all that comes both directly and indirectly from Dave Dameshek, who, if you're paying attention, released his final episode of the DDFP yesterday. And the phrase is how Sheck would describe around the league news write-ups on NFL.com, penned by Mark and I years ago, news with a touch of mirth. And like I said when he was on our show last week, Sheck is the godfather of mirth at NFL media. Before he came, it didn't exist, at least not in any form that was funny. And Mark and I didn't follow a traditional linear path to get to where we are. We started out as part-timers in 2010. And I think for me and Mark, I think we're in the same boat on this. There was two people at this company that really believed in us and gave us a chance. One was Justin Hathaway, our old news editor, who hired both of us within a month of each other in 2010. And then about a year and a half later, I want to say, when they were relaunching the news division of .com, had us be the editorial voice of it. And so Justin was a champion of us. And then Sheck, I had no experience talking to him, Mike. Zero. I never did it in college. I never did it after college. I was 30 years old when I was hired at the NFL. Mark, I know you weren't someone that came from any deep broadcasting background, but Sheck started to have us on the podcast. In fact, I looked it up because I was feeling a little nostalgic today, and it was July 19th, 2012, when Dave had Mark and I on the show for the first time. And we were on a few times, and that gave birth to the ATL Debate Club, which was a weekly mini pod featuring just Mark and I tacked onto the back of Dave episodes. And then that spun out into about a year later, Greg and Wes now in the fold, and the this podcast, which was the Around the League podcast, and it's now the Around the NFL podcast, of course. And I was thinking about all this history this morning while listening to Dave's last show with us. And I know, like I said, he doesn't want us to make a big deal about him. And I know our relationship with him is going to continue. And we look forward to having him on the show again down the line. And maybe we'll cheat life, one of those Sheck sayings, and attend a Dodgers game, one of those weekday matinees, once the world gains some sense of normalcy. But as a podcast, just wanted to say thank you to Dave, both for the opportunities and for being such a fun person to work with all these years. And can't wait for what comes next from Dave, because he's a truly talented and good dude.
Yeah, I'd say real quick that, I think Justin Hathaway encountered some resistance when he tried to put us in those roles of writers with opinion attached to the writing. And I'm sure Dave did too, and we never would have known about it. But the thing I could say about Dave is that was, almost 10 years ago when he gave, and if you go back and listen to that first encounter with him on his show, I sound like a scared fifth grader. I mean, I'm offering no opinion of worth, and
it was scary.
I don't even know how to speak into the mic at that point. But the thing about Dave is that since that time, I think he's done that for about 50 other people who would have never naturally been given a role on any show. It's some people from out of left field. And I just think that that's who Dave is. And he could have said, forget that. And even as our show became what it was, it's the one person I always thought of that we never would have had our show without Dave. One of us at least would not have been on this podcast, if not both of us. I don't know how it would have all unfolded, but it doesn't happen without Dameshek. Not in the way that it has.
He's a mensch, to
Yes.
use the word from Dave and I's background, Mazel tov. I mean, he's a wise man. I mean, he should, after siring as many children as as him. He is wise, but I do think of like a lot of his sayings, like cheating life. Like I'll catch myself cheating life and think of Dave in that moment because he has a way of like putting things so perfectly and then repeating them over and over so you never forget them. And it's like he's like inside of all of our heads sometimes. So what better compliment to a broadcaster than that? And we know he's going to do other great things. So I'm looking forward to what he's going to be announcing coming up.
Yeah. And I might get it. I don't even know. I might get an annoyed text from Dave for us even talking about this, but I just thought it was important. I just because of all the things we just said, he was such an important figure to us. So best of luck to you, Dave. And we will hear from you down the road, hopefully soon. All right. That's it for today's show. Good show. Good conversation. Important conversation. And we'll be back on Wednesday. Yes, talking about the Tennessee Titans and whatever else comes across our plate. So thank you to everybody for listening. Until then, this is Dan Hansa signing off for The Quiet Storm. The old boss, Rick Hollywood. Stay safe there, Ricky. And everybody else. Steve Wyche, of course, as well. Until Wednesday.